All right, final day of forensics, everyone. We made it. We got some presentations today. To celebrate the presentations, I don't know if the camera's on, but I wore the official fraud fanny pack, so yeah, my GTRAs who helped me out also got fanny packs, yeah, so I can get them for you. They're very reasonably priced. And they disable radio frequency IDs, which means that I'm guessing that if somebody tried to track you, that they couldn't track you, which is great for committing fraud. So yeah, so all right. So let's see. I think I don't have who's listed. Whose is this? That's Lotus. Okay, Lotus. I'm going to get up and get ready to present. I'm going to have you hold on for just a second so I can get set up back there. You can go ahead and come up, but like, don't start until I get set up in the back.
Okay, I'm starting.
Until
No
it's
kidding.
a story while
I don't have any stories. I'm pretty boring.
you're the person so like you can't face up.
Alrighty, are you ready?
Give me, let's get 1 minute. I didn't get logged in before.
I'm just
Starting.
got energy.
Yeah, you definitely could.
It's 30 seconds.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. We watch it. I'm the one that's going back, so I was excited. Look how. I know.
You'd say, how about them rocks?
All right, Lois, whenever you're ready.
Okay. So my fake fraud was based at a shoe store. The owner is Sam Page, and he hired Jenna to investigate his fraud. For some reason, despite the fact that they were just as popular as they had been for like ever since the shoe store opened, they were not breaking even. They were actually losing a lot of money. They had to let go most of their staff, so now they're operating bare bones with just their manager, payroll, and 3 part-time high school students. And he's still hemorrhaging money and he doesn't know where it's going. So he hired a fraud investigator, and turns out the person committing the fraud was his manager, his most trusted person, Helen Baker. It started because she had accidentally over-ordered inventory one time and realized that she was the one in charge, so she could just put the shoes in her car, sell them on Poshmark, and pocket the extra money because she was a single mom. She didn't have a college education, so she's trying to do her best to support her kids and not lose them to her horrible ex-husband. So over time, she just started over ordering more and more and more and just creating fictitious purchasing orders, making it look like just the shoes were going up in price, but we weren't changing our sales price until they were just hemorrhaging money. And yeah, that's it.
How would you characterize the pressure in this particular fraud?
Um, I mean, the pressure was definitely pretty high because she was like at the time she started the fraud, she was gonna potentially lose her kids, and so she wanted to maintain the primary parent in their custody agreement. So at the time it was pretty high, but then she just got used to doing it, so she was able to stay with her kids on vacation and get them nice things and buy all their sporting and school stuff without really needing too much help.
I noticed that Jenna was your investigator.
Mm-hmm.
Would you say she was a heavy-handed investigator in her investigation? She put a lot of
Mm-hmm. She was spying on them. She's like, if I showed up at this time, what would happen? And then I'm like, oh, I don't know. Let me come up with something.
All right, I'll ask Jenna's question. Are there any Easter eggs in the fraud?
No, the only like Easter egg which people wouldn't know is that the 2 of the high schoolers, one is Audrey is my best friend, Eric is my dad's middle name, and when I was creating the characters, I was watching Bones, which is why that one guy's last name is Hodge, which is short for Hodgins. because I'm an old lady and I like crime shows.
I would say that you're done, but I was gonna compare you to my mother. All right.
My good, Dr. Barnes.
Yeah, go ahead.
So the fraud I created was at Eagle Aggregates Incorporated. It's a company that owns and operates 3 different quarries. So they just produce rock by blowing it out of the ground and then sell it to various customers that need it. And a little bit of backstory. So the owner and the CEO, Terry Smith, noticed that their cash balance was going down a lot, about $1.5 million. But at the same time, their profitability was increasing. So he didn't really know why. So that is why he hired Tyler. And then, so the main thing that caused the fraud was the longtime controller just retired. So they brought in a new controller to do it. And she noticed that there was a lot of processes that needed to be improved. So one of the main ones that happened was with vendor approval process. So the old process was only long-term vendors needed to be vetted and approved. So if a vendor was going to sell more than 15 times to the company, they needed to be vetted. But if it was less than that, they just needed to be approved by the procurement manager, when that was just like a simple Google search, calling the company, making sure they could actually do what they said. They changed that to all vendors need to be vetted and approved. And then they just changed the payment process. So you need less approvals for payments because we're approving the vendors more the first time. And this new process took place for all vendors after June 30th. So Jessica Harris, the senior accountant's been with the company 12 years. She was mad. She was passed up for the promotion, wasn't even considered. So she colluded with Tom, the procurement manager, and then created Rockwork Contractors, put in a date to become a vendor, or put in a request to become a vendor on June 30th, the last day, and it was approved the same day with 0 days in between. When Tyler looked at all the other vendors, it was anywhere from 1 to 5, so that was definitely weird. And Rockwork Contractors was supposed to fix the roads to the quarries. You can see that picture. That's what it looked like beforehand, and that's what it still looks like today, because they did not do a thing. So over an 8-month span, they took about $425,000, and that was split 60-40 between Jessica and Thomas.
Collusion fraud, correct?
Yes.
All right, and so what would you characterize the segregation of duties being separated there?
There really wasn't much segregation of duties on the procurement side, because Tom was able to approve a vendor and approve the vendor for purchases and then also approve the payment. So there was no one looking into those.
Cool. Thank you. Making you up.
Ready?
20 seconds. Thinking about that.
So my fraud took place at Calamity's Catalogs. It's a small bookstore in Kansas City. The owner is Calamity. She is currently absentee working on a different project in St. Louis and recently promoted a new manager. So there are 2 managers right now. It was Claudia and Charlie, and Charlie was recently promoted. So the fraud that happened was asset misappropriation. Claudia and Carl were stealing inventory and selling it on Facebook Marketplace for profit. It took place and was caught pretty quickly, so it was just took place for about a month, for about $600, and they changed inventory logs, lied about damaged deliveries, and also did some fake returns. And then kind of to solve it, you were given the transaction history, and then you could look at what was actually took what the vendors received as damaged inventory that was returned. do physical counts of inventory. There was security camera footage and then Facebook Marketplace posts and bank statements. But
Clarify the amount that you clarified was for the fraud amount, is that just, lost revenues or is that?
it was lost revenues and some expenses because they were still paying for the books that were being stolen. So.
Which one is it? Hide something? Yeah, hide flooding. Okay, thank you. Refresh. Okay. Are you ready?
Yep.
Okay, so for my fraud, I did a charity fraud scheme. Essentially in the case you were given details about Titan Edge Global. They're a aerospace engineering company and defense technology company. And essentially you were hired by Quincy Mercer, who's the CEO. And essentially he received an anonymous tip from an employee about fraud within the company. So to solve this, you'd have to kind of talk to employees and see like what the company culture is like, what they think, and they would get back to you and say that they think everything's great except for Quincy. It just really doesn't seem fit to be CEO. He is a little bit older, and so he's a bit more trusting of his executives. So then you could talk to Quincy exactly and see if executives are coming up to him with like pet projects or like personal projects. And essentially he says there's no other projects except for that employees will come up to him with like donation ideas. So then from that, you could get a list of donations. From that, you'd see that like all but two are, or two of them are like paid in full at one time during the year. So then you'd want to inquire more about those donations, and you'd see that Freedom Bridge Solutions is a new charity for Titan Edge this year. And then you want to see like the board of directors, you'd see Colonel Benjamin Turner, and then upon more like inquiry, you'd see that he recently joined the advisory group. And then you could talk to like the Titan Edge HR department and see that there's some link because he goes by Benji Turner in Freedom Bridge, but he was actually a former employee of Titan Edge Global. And he was really good friends with Ryan Caldwell, who's the marketing manager of Titan Edge. And essentially, Benjamin Turner just feels like he was wrongly fired, so he wants to get revenge on Titan Edge. So him and Ryan Caldwell talk about this and they conspire. Ryan brings up Freedom Bridge as a great donation idea to his executives. They bring it to Quincy, he approves it, and then they make the donation of $70,000. That goes over. They bring in Dan Prescott, who's the treasurer of Freedom Bridge, and basically that's just so that way they can kind of get away with this. They bribe him with $5,000 for a Mexican vacation because he loves to swim with turtles. And yeah, and then the leftover amount of the 65 is split evenly between the two. That's it.
So your investigator made the comment that Maddie is very good at creating a fraud.
I don't think that's a great thing to say about me.
Is that a compliment and it should-
No.
Yeah.
No.
In your grade, or should I consider that to be something I should take away points for?
Oh, don't take away points. But I just did great at the assignment, not in real life. So Sydney was tasked with investigating my fraud, which was Simpsons University's athletic department. The first fraud was that Sideshow Bob, the men's basketball assistant coach, he was in charge of the university credit card for the basketball team, and he charged a lot of personal expenses to the company card because he had a girlfriend in Columbia, Missouri, and he would go visit her a lot. He would get hotel rooms. He would have nice steak dinners together. He would buy her groceries, and he would
like buy his gas with the company card to go visit her. And that turned out to be around $338,000. This happened because there was weak oversight from the head coach. The company policy was that your direct superior had to review the credit card transactions, and the head basketball coach just didn't care, just wrote off all of these credit card purchases. And then after that, there was no more review for those credit card transactions. And then how you would find this, the paper trail for this was that the travel expenses were way more than budgeted for the basketball team. You would look at receipts and you were to request the travel expenses and see that a lot of the like transactions occurred when there were no away games for the basketball team. And then you would look at the receipts and see it would be like hotel rooms for one person for a few nights, and like restaurants and gas for cars and stuff like that. And then my second fraud was the baseball coach Fat Tony committed it with Lennon Jackson, who was the equipment supplier. So the baseball team had to re-up, like get a new vendor for that year. And he recruited his friend Lennon Jackson to be the equipment supplier for the baseball team. And he charged them 25% more than they were actually selling the equipment for. And as a result, the baseball coach got a 25% kickback for making Lennon Jackson the vendor. And how this happened was collusion and weak internal controls for related party transactions. Like with just a little bit of investigating, you would have known that Lennon Jackson was a really good friend of the baseball coach. And then how you would have found this was through a quote of fair market value, quoting the fair market value of the equipment and seeing that that's not how much they're being charged. And then you would request Tony's bank statements and see that he was getting deposits from Lennon Jackson.
I think it's immediately obvious and based on the way the frauds come in, because I thought it was very unique the way you set up two kind of separate frauds within the same scenario. You kind of made the comment that this is just weak oversight. Would it be immediately obvious that there was potential for fraud in multiple areas upon looking at the case?
Yes, because I made, like, whenever I first sent Sydney my stuff, I sent her income statement, and like the areas where there were fraud, the budgeted amount was significantly less than the actual amount spent.
You did, Dr. Barnes?
Yep, go for it.
All right, I did my fraud project over Arsenic Productions, which is a mid-tier festival production company. And the boss, they emailed the auditor and was like, we've been gaining popularity, we've been selling more tickets, but somehow our profits aren't increasing. If anything, they're going down. So can you investigate this? This company is in charge of everything for the festival. So there's a lot of areas they're in charge of, like setting up the stages, getting the DJs, security, vendors for food, vendors for clothing, VIP services, parking. So many different areas. And how I set this investigation up, I didn't really send much at the beginning. I just gave them a summary of the company and of the different processes, and just like gave it to them without any clues. So they had to investigate each part, which was probably a little difficult. And there was only one fraud that came down to, and it was Alex Thompson and Jordan Williams colluded, the procurement manager and the VIP service management. They colluded to create a phantom vendor called Elite Love Services. So they added this new vendor themselves late at night, which was a red flag. They submitted an invoice for $261,000. And this was just promising for an amazing VIP experience. This was signed off by Alex and approved by Alex, which was another red flag. Payments were going straight to Alex's personal bank account. And with this money, he would use like less than half of it to buy actual equipment for VIP lounges and then pocket the rest of it. So auditors saw, and later on auditors saw there was only 115,000 worth of amenities provided in the VIP services. If you take the difference, it's $146,000 differences, and they would split it between themselves. Classic case of an expense inflation. Why'd they do it? Basically, just they saw the opportunity and wanted more money. They're greedy. They also work closely together, and they were able to bypass some internal controls and submit and approve payments without much oversight. How you could have found this after investigating all the different areas, you'd probably end up checking payments to vendors and notice the unusual size of Elite Lux invoice, which was way more than everybody else. And then you could see that Alex submitted and approved payments. And then if you asked for the vendor file for Elite Lux, there was no TIN or contact information provided. And then you discovered that the actual delivered services were less than what they paid for, way less, and followed the money right into Alex's account. That's how they did it.
Your, I guess, I'm trying to look at the, think of the right word. What did you base this fraud on? Like, did you have some sort of events that occurred in real life that you kind of thought that's kind of cool, I'd like to do some derivative of that, or did you just kind of come up with this on your own?
Not really. I was just trying to make it personal to me. I like music festivals. I was like, oh, that sounds cool. But then once I turned it in, you said that it's just like the fire festival that went down.
Yeah.
And yeah, but I didn't think of that about that before I created it.
It's very interesting because I think things like this, they're really, really cool to investigate because they're such sweeping, massive endeavors. And people are so focused on kind of the experience and don't really think about the details. It's very, very, very similar. It's kind of the FTX saga in the same context of everybody was focused on the big picture and nobody was really focused on the details. And so things get a little out of hand like that. So, you know, I really enjoyed what you put together.
What you get for $261,000.
Sounds about right in this game.
So my fraud project was about Electric Eel Inc., which is a small electronics manufacturer. And the case starts with an anonymous tip that there's something fishy going on with their customers. So through investigation, you can find out that one of their customers, Sable Quail, is a little bit off. Their first order was made before they were approved as a customer. And unlike all the other customers, they have no freight. They come to the warehouse to pick up the goods. So this fraud was perpetrated by Felix, who is Electric Eel's director of billing, and his half-sister, Kitty. So Kitty set up this company, Sable Quail, and Felix, as the director of billing, one of his powers is to approve of customers. So he approved them as a customer without any oversight. So Sable Quail orders from Electric Eel every month. And then Kitty rents a moving truck, shows up to the warehouse to pick up the goods, and then goes to sell it to a third party. So once that's done, Electric Eel sends out the invoice. And then also as the director of billing, Felix just marks it as paid. So if you investigate, there's no evidence, there's no supporting documentation that any of the orders were ever paid for. So with that money, Sable Quail pays half of it to Kitty as a salary, and then half to another company, Amber Stork, which is owned by Felix, and then that just pays him the rest of the money, which you can find on his bank statements. So the overall impact of the fraud is about $10,000 worth of inventory was stolen each month, which was sold for about $6,000 of profit each month. And over the course of about a year and a half, Electric Eel lost about $170,000 in profits or in inventory.
Did you plan the names of the cases, knowing that you would be doing this blind and going to get the images up there?
I had the name I was like looking at names to name the different people in the case, and I saw Felix, and I went with Felix, and then I was like, okay, now it's themed.
It's okay, I did pretty late too, AJ. I thought I was gonna be last. Actually made a picture for Jason in a suit, but it didn't look like him, so then I was like, I'll just do a picture. Okay, so my project, I did the haters, Valentine, payroll scandal. So if you were asking about Easter eggs, it's kind of like in the title, it's a love story and it's on in the payroll. So I create, basically Jason Yu is used to be a ex forensic investigator. He worked for the FBI, retired, opened up his own firm and he got billions of dollars basically with private clients. And then he decided to sell that and not buy, but create his own football team since he hated the Raiders. He named his team the Las Vegas Haters, which is their mascot's the Navy, which is, they captured the pirates. So that was like kind of fun. And then so this happened in 2040 and they won 3 Super Bowls in the span of 10 years. So from 2050, Jason decided to hire some new CEOs, CFOs, but he decided to step down. So the fraud occurred in 2021 after the season. So he hired his grandson, Jimmy Butler. He's they look alike, right? So how it goes is Jimmy Butler came from a wealthy family, very privileged, and he felt there's sense of entitlement when he came to the job. He used to work at Deloitte, but he got fired because he was on an engagement audit and then work out for the team because they didn't catch the audit engagement and fraud. So yeah, he got let go. And then he came to work one day on his first day and he saw the most beautiful woman on the planet, Whitney Houston. And they fell in love, started going on dates. And yeah, but Jimmy Butler was looking at the NFL salaries and was like, Whitney Houston's like my goddess and she deserves way more than I'm giving her. So it's like, what better way than to make an actual fictitious NFL player salary so they can live off of that. And that's what they did. Since Whitney Houston was in charge of payroll, they were able to, Whitney Houston would create this fake fat salary of $10 million. It was for 6 years, but the fraud got caught by Kirsten, so it only happened for 1 year. The financial impact was $10 million. So how it would work was, if you were to solve the fraud, I gave 2 hints. One was like the budget for the salary cap was over by 10 million. Another thing was like a hint was that the anonymous tip that a player was, not a player, someone in the company was getting paid a lot for not doing very much. So that's how you're able to start. And then you start looking at the stats and you realize that the player John Malbert was like injured and he wasn't playing, but players get performance bonuses and he was getting paid 25,000 per month. And you're like, why is he getting paid if he's not playing? So then you look at his bank account and you realize his bank account is related to Jimmy Butler and his same address. Then you look at Jimmy Butler's account and you realize that he's only getting half the money. So the other half was going to Whitney Houston's account and they used the money to go on expensive vacations, luxury meals, and yeah, etc. Thank you.
So is the lesson here is the only real fraud is the one that you real, or what, only real love is the only one that you be able to commit fraud for?
Yeah, that's true love. But if you're not committing fraud for a lover, you don't really love them.
Brock is really behind that.
You good, Dr. Mark? Okay, so my fraud involved the Truman State men's swim team, also known as freestyling with the finances. The main 2 people we're going to be looking at today are the assistant coach Doug and the manager Maggie. they basically worked together to steal some of the swim team funds through scholarships and just regular equipment purchases. And they kind of moved it out through general expenses. So starting with the scholarships, basically Maggie was in charge of allocating the scholarships. And there's 23 people on the swim team. And then upon further investigation, you find out only 20 of them are actually swimming. So 3 of them aren't even enrolled in the university. They have graduated, they're alumni. And the 2 that were getting scholarships were Amin S. and Daniel F. It totaled $2,500 worth of scholarships. They didn't receive it, so then it went back into the swim team budget. Doug would then go buy Visa gift cards at like Walmart or Costco and label it as team snacks or food. And he did this in a very like short amount of time, and they were all in increments of $500. So if you requested the scholarship statements as well as the just general expenses, you would see that $2,500 worth of snacks in like 3 weeks, even for the swim team, is kind of absurd. So that's one way to find that out. And then they would split it, they would Venmo each other half of that 2,500. Next, for the equipment purchases, Doug was in charge of the equipment purchases, and he had to go through a provider, BSN. They get a 40% discount on tier equipment, but he knew somebody at BSN that would conveniently leave that off. And so it would show, the equipment expense was 40,000, he was only billed 32,000, and then he would just pocket the difference. So in total, it was only about $10,000 of a fraud, but I kind of wanted to make it semi-realistic. The swim team budget isn't very big. So Colin was my investigator, and he caught on to this very quick and solved both of these frauds. So yeah.
Are these, are those, assistant coach and or the manager, are those real people?
Yeah. Doug is a real person.
Permission to use their likeness? All right, I'm gonna stop recording, but I still have a few pieces of feedback and questions that I want to throw at you guys. So I guess when in a recording, thanks for everything. It's been a great semester. All right.